How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, great discussion coming our way today. We're going to talk about tips to increase employee morale. Now, guys, this is going to come from multiple levels because it's going to come from frontline up, but more importantly, it's going to come from higher echelon down. I think we all play a part into the culture that will help us increase employee morale on all levels. So this isn't really about pointing the finger and blaming one side over the other, but rather what can we do so we all can look forward to going to work on our Mondays. I have three guests that are going to be on with us. We're going to have Russ Hamilton, Joe, and we're also going to have Butch. It's going to be a great show, but let me get those sponsors introduced real quick. So our first sponsor is American Military University. If you guys are looking for a higher education, looking to get that degree, please check out American Military University. It's a great online school, very supportive of what we do in corrections, supportive of what we do on Tier Talk. So guys, again, check it out, American Military University. We also have Guardian RFID. From inmate tracking and cell checks to cloud-based business and artificial intelligence, Guardian RFID digitally transforms jails, prisons, and juvenile detention facilities of every size. Visit guardianrfid.com for more information. Guys, we also have content that we post up on there as well. So if you guys get a chance, please check it out. A lot of good tips being shared on that channel. And we also have Thin Gray Line Media. Guys, if you're looking to write a book, get something published, especially if it relates to corrections profession, check out www.thingraylinemedia.com. Guys, that's my boy David Schilling. He's helping me finish up my book. We're getting closer. We're just going through the line edits now, but it's on its way, guys. Lessons learned while working in a prison. My journey from officer to administration. It should be on its way out soon. We're down to days, guys. We were literally down to days. Guys, this isn't just a book. It's going to be a journal. It's going to be where you can put your thoughts in, and then you could pass those thoughts on to those who you feel have the greatest potential. And also, don't forget, guys, Inmate Manipulation Decoded is also available. That's on the market now. You can find that on Amazon. All right, so what's up, Russ? What's going on?
Anthony, how's it going there?
Good, Russ. Hey, Russ, you mind introducing yourself again to our audience?
Of course not. My name is Russ Hamilton. I'm a once former and retired correctional sergeant with California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. I've also worked in the juvenile justice field as a senior correctional officer. I now work for a private company, and we do reentry and rehabilitation for a local jail and a local probation department.
Right, and Russ, you looking forward to today's discussion?
Absolutely, man. I'm here to wrangle everything I can out of it for you.
It's employee morale. And
yes.
Yeah, hopefully we cover it at a fair angle. I just got to have people to have open-minded when they listen to a discussion like this. We also have Joe. What's up, Joe?
Hey, good evening, everybody. How are y'all?
Hey, Joe, you mind introducing yourself to our audience?
Absolutely. I'm Joe Pomponio. I'm a retired lieutenant with the Texas Department of Corrections and also a retired police officer and current panel member with Tier Talk.
Yeah, we love having you, Joe. And Joe, good topic. Would you agree? Tips to increase employee morale?
Absolutely, especially during this time.
Yeah, and again, different levels, guys. Front line up and then upper echelon down. And then we also have Butch. James, what's up, James?
Anthony, how's it going?
Good. James, you mind introducing yourself as well?
No, I don't mind. Butch Ferreira, Massachusetts Department of Corrections, 35 years, 9 months. Started as a correction officer, worked my way through the chain of command. I retired as the Assistant Deputy Commissioner of the Northern Sector.
Yes. And guys, it's always an honor to have every one of you on today's panel. Just trying to make sure we don't have any feedback. All right, guys. So this is going to be a great discussion. We're going to be talking about tips to increase employee morale. But the first thing I would like to explore is what we think affects employee morale. So obviously, in general, you got understaffing, overworked staff, changes that are happening that frontline doesn't feel invested in, bad management. I mean, the list goes on, but I figure what we could do first is get our input from our guests. So I'll go with Russ first. Russ, in corrections, what are some of the things that affect employee morale in a negative way?
So I'm going to talk about one thing. When I first heard that this was going to be the subject broached today, I was trying to think of a little bit different an angle. And I would say, one thing that really impacts employee morale are negative people. The negative people, they're always going to be that negative Nancy. They're always going to be that person, that's just, spreading zero peace, lots of hate, lots of discontent, and whipping things into a frenzy. And they're more invested in seeing the reactions out of people than they are about trying to either find solutions or sometimes, just to go ahead and try and appreciate the positive things that there are in corrections. And, that just becomes kind of a toxic minefield. Nothing you can do, nothing you can say is ever going to make a positive impact on some of those people. And everything that they touch turns toxic as well. So sometimes what we have to do, it's easy for us to want to glom on and say, yeah, what that guy said. Instead, maybe we need to, step back and say, hey, you know what? What he said, while it's absolutely true, there are still things that we can do that will have a positive impact on us and not stay there stewing in the negative impacts.
Yeah, I want to mention something too, by the way. Negative people, that's a big thing, because sad thing is, as much as we want to get people into this profession, if we connect them to negative people, the sad thing is that it's going to wind up pushing them out. So having said that, the people that are closest to the new people coming in, the people that can make that impact, have to find a way to find positive, be intentional with something positive about this profession. Negativity kills. I mean, negativity, it spreads faster than positivity. Unfortunately, it's just the way the world works. When you have someone that's negative, believe it or not, management needs to do what they can to, try to see what that situation is and see if they can shift that negativity into something better. Or if it starts to kill the team, then unfortunately they need to eliminate that negativity, because again, we're looking for positive morale. That's what we need. And again, we are mostly affected by the people that are directly next to us. I think that's a big thing, Russ, because the funny thing about what you're saying is, especially in relationship to employee morale, is the first thing we need to do is look inwards. We need to look at the things that we can control, as opposed to the things that we cannot. So the first thing I would do is look at myself and say, am I being excessively negative? Are there things that I'm overlooking that are positive because I can't get myself out of this mindset? Hey, Joe, what's your thoughts on negative people?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, negativity and toxicity, you got to weed that out, because if you allow it to fester and go on, it'll kill the morale of the shift. Either the people will start joining in with them, what he said, or you get them people that come to shift and go, oh shit, here we go, we got to listen to this crap all over again during shift briefing. I'm so sick of hearing it. Either way, it spreads like a disease and causes negativity throughout the shift. You have to cut that off at the head and knock it out quick if you expect to keep any kind of morale on your shift.
The funny thing is, guys, I want to mention something. We all have concerns, and obviously we want to have those concerns addressed. For me, I find when it comes to negativity, I find that it's people that constantly find a problem for every solution. If that makes any sense. You come up with a solution, here's another problem. It's like, hey guys, eventually we have to move forward. Either you're going to be a resource or you're going to be an obstacle. So having said that, I believe that people that are negative just to be negative does also stop us from moving forward, and it keeps us exactly where we are. And sometimes that's not good. Sometimes, in corrections especially, we have to keep moving forward. So again, negativity can literally stop everything. And now the problem is people that are looking to move forward, we all feel trapped. So, hey, Butch, what's your thoughts on negativity?
Anthony, some of the prisons I've been in and worked in, visited, audited, around the country, prisons can be a very negative place. There's a lot of negativity going on in prison just based on our function and the role we play in society. So, there's a lot to be negative about and a lot to complain about. And, so the administration, they really have to work hard to try to eliminate that stuff or reduce it. I don't think we'll ever eliminate it. There's a lot of factors that play into it. There's a lot in many states they have unions. Unions are very good at times, and good unions can fight for the right causes. But local unions sometimes can drag down some folks as well. But it's a constant. I think that's one of the things that you always have to keep your finger on the pulse as an administrator is what is the morale, and if the morale is down, try to identify exactly, if you can, what the issues are relative to bringing down the morale. Could be multiple factors, could be a single factor. I wrote down some factors that I know impact staff morale, and and a lot of that. I've never worked in a state that was a right to work state, so I always had a union. So it made it, a little bit more difficult because we had to bargain collectively. Like we couldn't, give raises and certain things like that to perk up morale when we saw some folks that were maybe struggling with that stuff. So negativity is one of the things that over my career I know existed for was always a constant element that we had to deal with for almost my entire career. Whether I was a line staff member, I was part of that group of folks where I could listen to it and see it. And then as I moved up the chain of command, and it's at every level. It's not just at the front line. We had negative people all the way to the top. Sad to say, on occasion, but we dealt with it a little bit differently than the line staff, and promotions could stop based on that type of behavior. And but we also had some good coaches that would snap people out of it. So you could dip into some bad morale on occasion and come out of it and be good for a little bit, and then something else would happen, some adverse legislation or staffing, some bad management, adverse court conditions, decisions, and then you're right back in it. So it's constant, and I don't think it's just related to corrections either. I think that there's probably a number of different professions that have to deal with this type of stuff.
Yeah, and I want to go first. I want to start from the top down, and the reason why is, guys, is at a macro level, at the highest level, obviously the upper echelon, the highest level does affect the culture. Now, don't get me wrong. Each facility is also going to have its own culture, and then you're going to have a culture within the culture. But having said that, the highest level is what has the greatest influence over that culture. And I want people to realize that if you don't have a culture at the highest level that shows appreciation to the lowest level, well, to me, that's the start of a culture that's going to start to dwindle downhill. I think one of the things that I was taught as I moved up, just through experience, is to show appreciation for the work being done. However routine the work may be, or however extraordinary, the point is showing appreciation really does show a level of gratitude to the person doing the job. It's personal. And when I talk about appreciation, I mean, if you could be specific with that appreciation. We're not talking about kicking out generalities. We're talking about, hey, Russ, thanks for doing what you did last night, but wasn't for you, we wouldn't be able to do this. The more specific you are with that level of appreciation, the more people feel responsible. The more people feel invested, that someone actually cares for the work I do. And as higher level, if you care for the work someone does, it gives them value in what they do. And then eventually that value comes to inwards. It starts to go at them like, yes, if my work has value, then that means I myself have value. And then when you could specify some specific level of appreciation for what that person does, it makes them feel that they're not so easily replaced. I mean, I hate that too. In corrections, people are like, well, you could easily be replaced. So, if you do something foolish, you could easily be replaced. I don't like spreading that, because I don't like people thinking that their work is easily replaceable. I like people to think that, hey, guys, you do matter. And, without you, we wouldn't be able to do these things. I think everybody brings a certain level of talent, skill, and giftedness that complements the team. And I also want to add something else too, guys, and I'll go with Russ on this first, is that if you don't have a culture of appreciation, at the highest of levels, because obviously it starts at the highest levels and trickles down. But if you don't have a culture of appreciation for the work that's being done, the value of the people that are doing it, then you could try to do these external incentives like pizza parties and stuff like that, but it's not going to matter. Because having said that, if you don't have a culture in which people feel appreciated and valued, and more importantly, that people can trust you, then if you try something like that, like a pizza party or something, just to build confidence back in management or in leadership or back in the agency, people are going to look at that as superficial, and they're going to question the motive, because it's not good timing. You know, you really have to establish appreciation and value every day before you think you could do a fix-all solution by, oh shit, things are getting bad, let's do a pizza party. No, guys, if you do a pizza party with this type of temperature here, it's going to go backwards quick, because all they're going to see front lines like, that's superficial, I don't trust it, what are they trying to get at? And it actually winds up taking away than it does adding. But Russ, what's your thoughts on starting off with a culture of appreciation from the highest of levels?
I think that feeling genuinely appreciated, and also acknowledged, especially for your strengths. We all know what our strengths are, and we show up day in and day out sometimes and really pull off some fantastic wins, just literally snatching victory out of the jaws of defeat, sometimes on a daily basis, and yet often that goes unrecognized. I think that the one thing that I see, though, that would really be the home run for administration to be able to pull off, though, is not just appreciation, but being able to seed all of their management team with real leaders. Because if you have real leaders out there, everyone is going to be better off as far as their morale goes, because they can look upward and they see someone they want to follow, and then it gives a chance for their true talents to come out, for them to want to go in there and do a good job, and then to be appreciated for doing that good job. So I think, like, if you were going to bring everything and break it all down to one base level, is that management team has to be full of leaders. If it's just full of people who are just there, managing the decline or just managing the malaise, as it were, then everyone is going to be disaffected and dissatisfied, and morale is going to keep spiraling downward.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying about having a culture of leadership, because what people need to realize, guys, leadership is about your service to the people that you oversee. You don't want subordinates, you want followers. I mean, look, right now my wife's giving me a bottle of water. She's not giving me the bottle of water because she's a subordinate to me. She's a follower. Thanks. No? No, I gotta figure it out. Sorry. It doesn't work for the home life, It just, okay, hold on. She asked the question. As you can see, I got a green screen. The reason why I can't put the background in yet for some reason is it slows down. It freezes me. But right now I'm having a dialogue here with the guest, so we can talk about it later. Yeah, we'll talk about it later, babe. Paid $160 for this. No, it will work, babe. It will work. It will work. You
put the background in after you're done doing this.
Oh yeah, I could also do that, babe. I could put the background in after it's done.
It's easy. I do it all the time.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. And I'm not going to edit this out. I think people need to see what a happy marriage looks like. So what do you call? But where were we? We were talking about what was it, Russ? What was the last thought you had?
I was talking about. I just mentioned talking about seeding the management team with leaders. Not rank, but leaders, because that allows the people down there in the trenches to have someone to follow, to bring out their talents, and to feel that they're contributing and that they're doing a good job, and that they're going to get recognized for doing that good job because they're following great leaders.
Yeah, and guys, by the way, leadership is really with your relationship to the people that you oversee, and then in direct relationship to being productive. So having said that, being a leader is great because it does start with the connection to the people that you oversee, the people that are in your charge, but in an effort to be productive for the team. So having said that, I think that's great. Having leaders put in these positions that don't lead by position, but rather lead by trying to build the connection and doing what's best for their team really does carry a lot of weight. And I want to also mention too something, guys. We did a show a while ago about management by walking around, and there are a lot of times where management may decide to walk around only when they see that there's a problem. It'd be worthwhile if they walk around also when things are being successful, because the last thing you want is to only walk around to point out flaws. That's not a good relationship to the people. I mean, you want to go out there and you want to be, like Russ said, and we all said, is that you want to truly be appreciative. When you go down there, you have to make sure that, you balance out the good and the bad, but you do your best to empower. So that means giving it back to the front line, but also show appreciation for the work that they're doing, because they're the ones that are the closest to whatever it is that has to be solved. So if you don't make them feel invested, if you go there just to point out flaws, then the people that could make the chance to help us grow, to be innovative, they stop taking risk and they stop taking chances, because they get concerned more about consequences and survival, as opposed to how can I help not just myself grow, but the agency grow. So yeah, Russ, I think that's very spot on when it comes to having people in higher levels that actually understand what a leader is. A leader really has nothing to do with position. Joe, what's your thoughts on that, Joe, to feed off on that?
Yeah, I mean, every facility has its, and we've all been there. We've worked for great administrators. We worked for good administrators. We worked for not so good administrators. But, I never really let any of them, at least the negative ones, I never really let any of them dictate how I ran my shift and how I kept my morale up with my people. In order to keep morale up, it doesn't take anything, over the edge, or, some super great thing. The littlest things mean a lot, especially when your shift is short. I would tell my sergeants to, let them handle calls for service. And I would go around to the duty post and, go relieve the boss. Hey, go take your break. Go get you a cigarette. Just the littlest things mean the most, and they'll come back and go, shit, Lou, you don't know how much that meant to me. That, I needed that. It's hot. I needed to take a break. It doesn't take anything, drastic, and I've worked for, when I retired, my assistant warden, who's a female, one of the best administrators I ever worked for, and would get out there in the trenches with me and go relieve staff, let them go take a half an hour break, go get them some cold water, especially during the heated months, go somewhere and cool off, or go get a cigarette, whatever you don't have to do anything drastic or over the moon. The littlest things mean the most. And I mean that wholeheartedly, but you got to have that kind of leadership and that kind of sincerity towards your staff and caring for your staff at all levels. If you don't, at some point in time and somewhere in the line of authority, it's going to break down at some point.
Yeah, I like what you're saying too, because you said littlest of things, guys. I mean, just your presence. Just your presence shows that you care. I mean, that's the key. I mean, a lot of us get these higher positions, and then when we're told we have to do something for our staff, it becomes more of an assignment, something that we need to do as opposed to something that we want to do. And I think that we as upper management, we need to switch that perspective. If ever there's a moment to do something to show appreciation, don't look at it as something that you need to do. Look at that as something that you want to do, because again, that should be something that you look forward to doing. And again, it should not be something that you're only doing once or twice a year. I mean, when you do have those big appreciation days, that should be a culmination of the whole year in itself. So when we're discussing things, we pretty much know exactly who our players are. I mean, that's another good thing about walking around and showing those specific appreciations, because you get to know your people at a very intimate level. And for them, again, it's small, like Joe said, but when an officer, I'm talking to officers mostly because, there's probably more of them than the other staff, but just in general, when I say front line, it's great for when, someone from the front line comes up and, you're just chatting with them and you're like, hey, by the way, how's your post doing? And be specific with the post. It's great to bump into somebody. Like I bumped into people outside of work and knew exactly what their post was in the prison, and for them, it's like great, because now if I sit there, let's say they're with their loved ones, and I go to sit there and say, hey, your husband or your wife is such a hard worker, yeah, that may carry some weight. But if I say, yeah, your husband and wife is such a hard worker, the other day when we had that code and they were able to jump in, do this, and this. I mean, there's validation for them that's internal, because they know that this person knows me and they know what I do. And it carries a long weight. It carries a lot of weight when you have those interactions and you're able to be specific to the point where that person says, not only do they know my name, but they know specifically what I do and what value I have for the job. I mean, and as you get hired, by the way, as you move up, it could be harder because you oversee more people, but you have to be intentional, with going back and trying to remember, the people that you're meeting every day and their exact job function, especially like, let's say for me, I've been at 4 different prisons. So now going to this prison here, I got to meet everybody from the beginning, get to understand the facility, the layout. But I promise you, the first thing that I make intentional are the people that I interact with that are right next to me. And as I'm moving around, I'm watching exactly what they do. So if I have to recall something later on, it's like, hey, thanks for helping me out last week when we did the medical escort. I appreciate that. And it helps me get to know the staff on a more intimate level. But hey, Butch, as you move up, Butch, it gets harder. But how important it is for you to really show that specific appreciation, especially as you get to those higher levels.
So some of the things that we were taught or we learned from other folks, or even some of the nice things that happened to me as a correction officer, as a sergeant, right, that I never forgot. So, I always, some of the folks that, work with me, I always tried to emphasize, and I never underestimate the influence just because you're a position, never underestimate the influence you have over your staff, good, bad, or indifferent. They're looking for you they have some expectation of getting guidance, and everybody seems to be, disgruntled or not, or, they're all looking for leadership one way or the other. So never underestimate that. And in presence, I think you hit it right on the head. The presence is, you have to be present. I know the standard nationally is that you tour the facility on a weekly basis. And, I consider myself one of the hardest workers in the agency at the time. It's tough to get around the entire facility weekly. But you can do most of it, and then you can catch up, on the next week. So presence and meeting staff, seeing staff, recognizing some good things. You're always going to find some things that need some touch up, and you're always going to make some comments to maybe the shift commander on things that you saw that need to be addressed. But just by getting around and meeting the people, and presence is a big thing. If you're hiding in your office, and you're not out and about, the staff, they're looking, they understand that. And what it may mean. I was used to a process where I would come in, the managers would come in the morning, and they would have a package of reports. At the end it was all electronic, but I may have violated the commitment to electronics a few times, and I used to have some of my key people print out the reports for me because I liked reading paper. And one of the things I could do with those reports, if I saw a good report, and I learned this from someone else, I would write to the author on the report and put it in institutional mail, good job, excellent report. And I'd put it in the institutional mail, and it would get to the person, maybe a day or two later, or the next time they're on shift, it's with their time card or wherever we used to put it in the institution. And whether they liked it or not, they opened it up because it had their name on it. And it had me, and I was the deputy superintendent at the time when I really started doing this. And it was just say, good job, good report, great information. It contributed to the overall mission. We did some other stuff. I thought employee of the month sometimes got a little, it was tough, but I used to let the staff, nominate the folks, and I used to let captains, they would meet and, kind of fight it out of who's going to get the employee of the month and stuff. I thought people appreciated that, but that type of stuff could get old on occasion as well. Sometimes folks, who probably weren't some of the best dependable folks, or they would do something good and, someone would want to nominate him, I would let that go through. Some people would say, nah, we can't have him. But, hey, the guy did something, the guy or the gal, the officer did something good. So those were all things that helped. But I got to tell you, that thing about the pizza parties and stuff like that, I never found those effective unless, things were running like a Swiss watch. Some of the stuff that the staff did that I thought did better when it came from the staff as opposed to the administration, and I was okay with that. They would do Super Bowl grids and squares, and everybody would pay a little money every week, and then at the end of the year they would pick their squares and the scores. I know you guys are probably familiar with that, gambling at the facility, probably not legal, and they would have they would rent out a place and have a party for those things, were fantastic. But it was the troops, and I used to let that stuff go, and I would buy my squares. Of course, I wouldn't go to the Super Bowl party, but my my name would be on there and that type of stuff. So there's a lot of things you could do, but presence, I think, was simple for an administrator. If something happened, I'm a big proponent also, Anthony, about assigning staff, meaning the leadership team. Try to keep them within an hour from home so that when there is some incidents that shift commanders could need help with, an inmate death, a suicide, regardless of what time of day it is, what day it is, you could shoot into the institution and sit back and assist and make sure that the shift commander, not to interfere or micromanage now, but to make sure that the response is appropriate. And if, go through a checklist, make sure everything's done so that we cover all our bases. If there was some type of serious staff assault, we could get out to the facility. We could get to the hospital or the doctor to see the staff. I always thought that, showing concern during those types of times also helped improve some of the morale issues. I used to discuss this all the time when we would making management moves. The guy lives 2 hours away. How effective can he be during those difficult times, and especially if it was a busy facility? And that's another thing. I thought that idle time for the inmates was the devil's workshop. It's the same thing for staff, in my opinion. A good busy facility, or people, supervising, making sure that searches are done, security inspections are done, people are walking, making their tours, doing what they're supposed to. If you did everything in your post orders, it'd be tough to take a break, if you did it well. So keeping people busy, being in a facility where not a lot happens, sometimes complacency is easy to get in there, and they substitute it with other things to do, which can bring down morale as well. But on the other hand, the real busy facilities with assaults and that type of stuff, then they get really tight, but it can get dangerous. So there's a lot of things you can do, but through experience you learn those things, and those are some of the things that we were able to get some of the best response from our staff.
Yeah, I want to touch on a couple of things that you said. We did talk about presence, and guys, mind you, presence has to have a purpose. You're not just voila, I'm there. No, you have to have a purpose with it. And I noticed something too, like, if you notice when you're on the compound and you're walking around and people are trying to be evasive when you're walking around, as opposed to people wanting to come and talk to you, that's something to take note of. Like, why are people always trying to avoid me? Because again, I can't sit there and comment the good or comment the specific good that you're doing or the appreciation I have for you if you're constantly looking to avoid me. So I try to look at, when I'm on the compound, what type of reaction are people having to me, and if so, is there something I have to adjust first? I always look inward. But I want to mention something about Employee of the Month that you mentioned, and this matters, guys. I think this carries a lot of weight. This matters. So sometimes when you look to increase morale, you may try external incentives, which are technically very superficial, and I wouldn't introduce them unless you already have a trusted team in play that really does have a house where the culture is good, the morale is good. Then if you want to do some external incentives, that's great. But when you're doing it where the water's still, you don't know, the problem is that they're superficial in the long run. They wind up actually doing more separation than good. And you really can't tell if people are supportive of what it is that you're trying to do, or if they're just supportive of the external incentive. I'll give you an example, a pizza party. Yeah, that's great. We had a lot of people come up for some pizza, but it's pizza. Are they coming up because they're supportive of management's effort, or are they coming up because they're getting a slice of pizza? And I also want to mention something with the Employee of the Month. The Employee of the Month is an appreciation award, not a recognition award. So if you have an officer or a staff member that does something great that's rather extraordinary, like save a life of someone on the streets, whatever the case, something extraordinary, we're going to recognize that person, and they're going to be put on that pedestal for stepping up and doing a great thing. That's great. But Employee of the Month should be more specific to, the routine work that's being done that through effort stands out. Because for me, I always looked at Employee of the Month as a chance to appreciate the employee, because not everybody's going to get a chance to have that extraordinary moment. And what I don't want to do is only recognize those extraordinary moments and then minimize the routine work that's being done that has value as well. And it's sad because we don't recognize the value until it's not done. So having said that, there are those recognition moments where this person saved a life. And yes, I want to make sure that we do what we can to recognize this individual. And there will be a time and place for that. But for the Employee of the Month, I think it should go more than just that one incident. I think when it comes to the Employee of the Month, it should go into just their routine on the job, and are they a trusted employee, how they work with the team, just, a bunch of things that help us make a decision of their effectiveness on the job in regards to really not just doing their job, but also increasing everybody's morale, because that to me matters.
Yeah, so I agree. Okay. So exactly. So if there's, you shouldn't have to wait for the Employee of the Month process to take place to recognize someone that deserves immediate recognition. As managers or leaders, you should have some templates already made out, where you can, of course they're modified, but and they're edited for whatever, different incident occurred. But, you shouldn't wait for the Employee of the Month to come out to recognize somebody for something that they did, 3 weeks ago that was worth being recognized immediately. You're right. One is appreciation, and the other is a recognition.
Yeah, and I want to get your thoughts on that too, Joe. I think that was a great point that you brought up, Butch. I don't think a lot of people see that there's a difference between the two. I think for me, Employee of the Month is someone I'm going to appreciate, and then there's the time where you can recognize someone for doing something extraordinary. My concern is that you're going to have a lot of workers that work in corrections that are not going to be put into areas where they can be extraordinary. And the problem is that we're spending so much time looking at something extraordinary, we're overlooking the routine that really matters. What's your thoughts on that, Joe? I'd love to if get your thoughts on that as well when it comes to morale.
Yeah, I mean, and I agree with Butch. If with the Employee of the Month program, a lot of facilities were doing it on a monthly basis. Personally, I think maybe once a quarter.
Yeah.
Because if you use it too much, it's something that you wind up just burning out. And every time somebody says, submit employees for Employee of the Month, it's, oh shit, here we go again. But you don't have to use that to recognize, great skills, great integrity, in an employee, especially if they do something either on the job or off the job that's, just outstanding. I had an employee that was at a gas station and he was filling up a state vehicle, getting it ready for a transport because we don't have gas depots at this, specific facility. Well, anyways, he pulls the gas pump out and he goes to stick it in the car, and the damn hose comes out of the bottom of the handle and it's spewing gas everywhere, And he had the presence of mind to not only get people to back their vehicles away from the pump, but he was able to make it to the emergency shutoff because the gas station attendant freaked out and didn't know where the the cutoff was. So, he kept a level head the whole time. And of course, he never said anything. He just said that, the gas pump broke. So, okay. So we loaded the convict up and go on. Well, the next day it comes out in the news that this, correctional officer saves the day and keeps, a fire from happening. And I'm like, holy shit. So I call him into the office. I'm, dude, you didn't tell me you saved the gas station from burning down. You just told me the gas pump broke, because he's that type of individual. That's something that you need to recognize right off the bat, and which we did. We sent it all the way up to our executive director's office, as a definite correctional officer attaboy. But, and I agree with Butch, if you use the employee of the month thing too much, it becomes monotonous and it loses its meaning, it loses its value, and it becomes just a redundant process. As far as morale pizza parties, I've done the pizza party thing, but I've been blessed to have shifts that were well running. And even my staff would tell you, we found that, when we were short staffed is when things worked the best, because everybody knew what had to get done, what needed to get done, and it got done. And at the end of the night, they felt not only tired because they actually did something, but they felt accomplished, that they got it done, with no operational difficulties. I don't know how it is there. Typically weekends are our slowest days. We'll have visitation going on, but as far as your daily normal processes like laundries running, education running, all your jobs are turning out, vocational maintenance. Typically Saturday and Sunday is their days. The offender population, their days off. So things were a little slower for the correctional officers. So, during those days when we were short, myself or somebody would go get some pizzas and, send a pizza to the post and stuff, which they appreciated. It doesn't take a lot to show you care. And I agree too. If you don't have a well-oiled machine and you don't have a high morale shift, pizza really doesn't mean shit. All it is just a free slice of pizza to them. It's one of those things that actually loses its meaning too. It may have been well intended, but ultimately the tempo of the morale for the shift or the facility lies with, it starts with your frontline supervision and works its way up. We're the ones that set the beat. We set the tempo, and I do that by keeping it positive, leave the negativity behind. And, we would challenge them. We would give them, like we would take correctional officers, I would pick one out every few days and make them, the honorary supervisor for the day. And their job was to stick with me. And when we did calls or when we had fights or when we had, they were the ones, they were telling me what we needed to do and why. I would actually be the escort officer, escorting convicts to medical for use of force physicals or fight physicals. And, they were the ones, okay, what do we do next, boss? What do we do next? What do we do next? Not only do you keep them engaged, you keep the morale up that way too, by keeping them engaged. And it also gives them insight into the bigger picture as to what supervisors really do. And when they go back and spread that word, then everybody wants a piece of it. And, you start turning things around. Again, giving them knowledge will keep morale up too.
Yeah. What's great about what you're saying is it's bringing about a level of investment. I mean, that's the key. I mean, if you have staff that's invested, that's a great way to start building a positive culture. I mean, I remember having a discussion with someone the other day where I was talking about how facilities, believe it or not, they kind of want to fall back into complacency, habits that are more convenient in nature, and usually in some cases, some level of isolated effort. So I think it becomes intentional for us every day to maintain a good working culture. And sometimes you could do that through also connecting with someone that has a great level of influence on the floor. You get them to buy in, and then they have some power to get others to buy in. I've never judged the temperature of a facility based on, as I said, a pizza party, because again, you know, unless you're lactose intolerant, everybody's going to love pizza. So all because everybody ate all the pizza doesn't mean that the facility is great and that pizza party is going to last us for 6 months to a year down the line. I mean, it doesn't mean that. You know, it means that everybody wanted pizza. What you want to do is you want to try for things that are more internally motivated, which really is effort. Good morale is intentional, right? So doing something like a thank you board, I tried, where you have a thank you board. All the comments for the board get put into a box, which is screened by a compliance manager or a coordinator, whatever it is. And, you know, you could thank the different departments or different individuals or whatever it is, whether it's specific incident or something in general. And then you could start to see if the morale is good, because that's intentional. That's someone walking out at the end of the day saying, you know what, I had a good day. And that good day was because of Lieutenant Joe Pomponio. So let me go ahead and put a thank you to them. You know, that's intentional effort. That's inward driven. And then when you come to work the next day and you see that board is filled with thank you notes, it's like, wow, you know, this may be a good or it's a great spark. It's a great spark. That's a great way to, one, you know, as a leader, we get to see the scoreboard, right? You know, we get to see where we're at in the game and whether we have to adjust or, you know, whether we're losing or we're winning. And that's a good scoreboard for us. We look at it and say, wow, that's great. Look at all these different thank yous that are coming from different departments connecting to each other, or different individuals, you know, seeing each other's value in the bigger picture, the greater vision. And what's great about that too is that also it's good because management is showing people how, excuse me, your work as an individual plays out into the bigger piece of the puzzle. So to me, having a thank you board or something to that effect, bear with me, something to that effect is inward driven. And it's a great gauge to see how invested people are in each other, and also just overall an understanding of what needs to be done. But again, those external incentives, very hard to make a judgment on, because because you had a pizza party, doesn't mean that everything's okay. It just means, as I said, people enjoy eating pizza. So one of the things I want to go back to Butch with real quick, though, is so right now we could be specific, as we mentioned before, with what's affecting employee morale. And we could do it from a frontline perspective up, you know, which is basically understaffing, changes that are happening, bad management. I get it. I mean, we've been through that a million times already. The problem is there's nobody here right now on this panel, and there's probably nobody right now that works at your facility that has a magic wand that can change that. So one of the things that I would first recommend is that we shift our mindset from an outcome-driven mindset to an effort-driven mindset. All because you don't have the outcome, or because you didn't get the outcome that you wanted, doesn't mean people aren't trying. It just means that right now, all we could do is provide the effort as best as we can, and then hopefully people respond to the effort. The sad thing is that a lot of us are being unfairly judged over an outcome that we have no control over, and we start to get separated from each other because, again, you know, well, management should do more to get people in. It's like, well, guys, look what we've done. We've paid money for recruiting videos. We're, you know, doing the pay. We're trying what we could, but unfortunately right now, nobody wants to come into this profession. And then management could turn around and say, well, wait a second. We've been getting people in, and day one in training, we partner them next to someone that's supposed to train them, and they're totally disgruntled. And within 2 days, they leave. So having said that, we could work in this isolated fashion and blame one party over the other, but that doesn't pull us together and say, hey, guys, this issue that has to be addressed on all matters has to be addressed with all of us coming together, not looking to point the finger, not looking to blame, and really see how our efforts play into the outcome. Regardless of what the outcome is, how do our efforts play into that outcome? Because we don't have control of the outcome. All we have is control of the effort. And I want to read something real quick for you guys, and I'll go to Butch on this. There's a book I'm reading. It's one of John Maxwell's daily readers, and it's called Control What's in You. And I think this matters when it comes to employee morale. It's real quick. I just want to read something. He goes, former UCLA basketball coach John Wooden, one of the greatest coaches who ever lived, said, Do not let what you cannot do interfere with what you can do. Wooden was known for stressing excellence to his players and encouraging them to work towards their potential. He never made winning a championship his goal. He focused on the journey, not the destination. Yet his work ethic and focus on the things within his control earned his UCLA teams 4 undefeated seasons, an 88-game winning streak, and an incredible 10 national championships. No one has ever done that before him, and no one has done it since. As you move forward on the success journey, you need to remember that what happens in you is more important than what happens to you. You can control your attitude as you travel on the journey, but you have no control over the actions of others. You can choose what to put on your calendar, but you can't control today's circumstances. Unfortunately, the majority of the fear and stress that people experience in life is from things they can do nothing about. Don't let that happen to you. What's your thoughts on that, Joe? And how does that play out in the correction setting? I mean, Butch, what's your thoughts on that, Butch?
That's pretty powerful stuff, boy. You start looking at, you trying to put that in the correctional, so our outcomes, aren't very good when we have, if we listen to all the so-called experts on the outside. I personally believe that our outcomes, if we're able to protect the public by keeping people incarcerated, in a manner in which within the parameters that are designed for us, then that's success. Other people think that the recidivism rate determines our success or not. But, you can get pretty, I think you'll be disappointed more, even though you're doing great things, if you concentrate on, some lofty goals like John Wooden. His goal wasn't to win national champion. If it was, I think he would have been disappointed more than he wasn't. But on the other hand, when he focused on the journey, there was a lot of positive things that happened throughout the journey that were lifelong lessons. I think that's what he's trying to say. As far, he was building character. He was building, adults from young men to full-grown adults in that 4-year span that he had them. And he taught them hard work and how to meet certain benchmarks and that type of stuff, but didn't necessarily mean, if he didn't win the national championship, would all that stuff be a failure? I don't think so. I think there's a lot of positives out of that. That's some pretty deep stuff. And, especially in today's day and age where we identify a lot of benchmarks, and if we didn't meet them, they would, we may be looked at as maybe not being effective. But it is the journey. That's some good stuff there. I mean, that's deep. I think, if we practice the basics and we don't have escapes and we minimize violence and we don't have assaults or staff assaults drop or are limited, we reduce that type of stuff. We may measure how many inmates are actually going to school, sanitation, audits, public health inspections, and we use those grades as benchmarks and to improve. Again, I'm not sure how that impacts the recidivism. I think it does, but, I don't think it'll ever recidivism. I don't think, unless, I'm a true believer. If the inmate doesn't want to change, we're not going to change him. We can, show him the way, but if he doesn't want to do it, he or she doesn't want to do it. So I think that's what he means by the journey, and we can identify benchmarks through things that we do well every day, or if we detect a problem and fix it, within the bigger scope of things.
Well, yeah, the reason why I think it's a great dialogue, guys, is that, when we're sitting there focused on these outcomes that we have no control of, and, we go to work, knowing that, I wish these things could change, and, and we're not doing enough to make it change. The problem is that we wind up becoming so miserable that, we're wasting energy on things that we cannot control. And it's, guys, I'm not a big fan of people getting mandated all the time. Don't get me wrong. And I'm not a big fan of changes that are happening without our input or our investment. And I'm not a big fan of bad management either. But having said that, I can't control that either. So having said that, I feel like I'd be wasting energy every day going over things that I cannot control, when it's like, hey guys, I still want to have a life. I got to shift my perspective. And this is where the morale goes inwards out. Because again, the problem is if we totally become outcome driven and we believe more false promises than commitment, because that's a concern. There's some people right now that will buy into a false promise and overlook someone who's willing to make a commitment. The person that's making the commitment saying, hey, listen, I don't have control of the outcome, but I'll try my best to give us what we need. But then you get the other person who's going to sit there and lie to you and say, yeah, I could change that tomorrow. You're understaffed? Not a problem. I'll get 50 on post by tomorrow. And we'll put more investment in a false outcome or a false promise as opposed to someone who's going to be committed and fight every day. And the sad thing is we're losing out on the people that want to be committed, because instead of them, now this is the higher level now looking for some level of appreciation, because we talked about, frontline appreciation. But let's look at, we have people, in the middle that are doing work, people in the upper echelon that are doing work, that have put into the effort, that when the outcome doesn't happen, they get very frustrated because, again, they're putting a big part of the effort in. And then when the outcome doesn't happen their way, they get stuck in the middle where, man, how am I going to translate another loss to the people I care about the most? And the sad thing is when they go out there and they go to tell the front line, hey, I'm sorry, man, I tried, but I just couldn't get that win. And the front line turns around at that manager and just pretty much judges them for the outcome, not knowing the effort that this person put behind the scenes, because you're not going to know that. That's not on Front Street. You're not going to know the effort that they put in. You're not. A lot of people are going to think it's a lot easier said than done, and it's not. It takes, I'm going to tell you something right now, guys. It's easy to speak downwards. It's hell hard to speak up. It's more intentional. So for a middle manager to come up at a table of upper echelon, even just to get a word in about something that their frontline needs, it takes courage. And that's regardless of if the person is successful by the outcome, because we shouldn't be judging the person by the outcome. We should be judging the person by the effort, their commitment to speak up. Now, the sad thing is if I take the loss, let's say I'm making the effort and I go to translate it and you guys are just more outcome driven, then the problem is I start becoming disenfranchised, because one is I feel that I'm failing, and it's an unfair judgment on myself because I don't have control of the outcome. All I have control is the effort that I put in, but then you guys are judging me on the outcome. And that's unfair as well, not realizing that I'm putting my best foot forward. So having said that, I think that we also have to make sure that morale isn't, yes, it's a culture, don't get me wrong, but morale is for everyone from all departments, no matter what level. Yes, I would love for morale to be driven down and really get to those frontline people. But let's not forget that it's got to stop at multiple stops along the way, because at any point, if the morale isn't where it needs to be at any level above that front line, then we got a problem right there. We got a pit stop. We got to stop. We got to figure it out, and we got to go down. But I'm going to tell you something. Those meetings we have with our staff, when we're all sitting together and discussing things from all levels, remember something. The people in management are also feeling the pressure. They're in a bit of a sandwich. They're getting the needs of the front line versus the wants of upper echelon, and they're caught in the middle. And all they can do inwards is, I can give you the best attitude and I can give you the best effort. That's all I can give you. I can't control the outcome, but I can give you my best. And if you start trusting in your management, knowing that, hey, you know what? I know we didn't get the outcome we wanted, but I know it's Gangi and I know Gangi's going to try, then you'll finally realize how, yes, we do want the wins, don't get me wrong, but you'll finally realize that the weight of success has nothing to do with outcomes. It's all about the effort and what's taken with the effort, because, guys, through effort, trust is built. Through effort, trust is built. All because someone has given me an outcome doesn't mean that they're successful. It means that maybe that outcome was easy to get, that anybody could have done. I think for me, the harder of times is where you get the best of people. Without struggle, there's no progress. if the outcomes are pretty damn easy, well, then anybody could do it. It's the outcomes that really are based on effort. But again, judging the person based on, the outcome is unfair to those who do commit to an effort. And sad to say, but most people would rather put weight on a false promise than they would on an actual commitment. What's your thoughts on that, Joe? Because I know there was a lot there.
Yeah, I mean, judging somebody's efforts based on, let's say, statistical data, not a good thing to do. I mean, it's better to visualize the process for yourself just to see, if your percentages are down. Let's use education for an example. In Texas, we're mandated to have a 92.8% weekly turnout rate. And if those numbers fall below that, then they're required to report to, the educational agency that their required turnout rate was down. And of course, your executive divisions start looking at, and they're already judging the facility and the tempo of the leadership from your warden's office down, saying you can't get these convicts to turn out for education. Well, no, boss, it wasn't about that. Out of my 2,800 convicts I have assigned to this unit, I had a total of 350 of them who were in an isolated dorm because they were COVID positive, and they were isolated to that pod and couldn't turn out for education. Now, out of those 300, 140 of them are assigned to education as students. So, getting the big picture visually versus statistically, huge difference. Never jump the gun on that and judge somebody's outcome and lack of effort by numbers on a paper. There's always going to be a little more to the story, and the other side of that, you and Butch made a good point, was that, and I even had a lieutenant tell me 30 years ago when I started wanting to promote, he said, look, Joe, I'm going to tell you now, worry about what you can control. Do not worry about what you can't control, because otherwise you're going to leave out of here on a stretcher as a cardiac patient for the rest of your life. And that always kind of stuck with me because, as a correctional officer, even, when I promoted up through lieutenant, I always kind of lived in the moment. I didn't base each day off the previous day. I never was that kind of go, shit, man, yesterday was such a cluster that, I'm dreading going to work today. Every day was a new day for me. And I knew that, every day was going to be a little bit different. And, most people need to learn how to not overjudge themselves by an outcome, because we've all been in situations where the outcomes weren't good. As part of the learning process, that's how you gain experience for leadership. You suck that up and you drive on. You never live in that moment, or should I say live in the past. Use it as a learning tool. Tomorrow's a whole new day. Worry about what you can, that's visually right there in front of you, what you can control, and don't worry about what you can't control. Because, especially on maximum custody units, where they're fighting, cutting, high contraband rates, high weapon rates, high drug rates. The pressures alone will, turn you into a cardiac patient. So, don't, as far as judging yourself, as far as your outcome, or letting somebody else judge your outcome or your amount of effort on an outcome, as long as you know that you did everything possible that you could do within, the confines of a policy and institutional safety, you shouldn't be that hard on yourself. It's too much pressure to put on one person, especially yourself.
Yeah. And I want people to understand what we're saying here. Like, there's a lot of reasons to hate being in this profession right now because of what we're going through. The big component here really is being understaffed. I get it. But, I think we're not telling you in any way that that's not a concern. And I wish that we had a magic wand that can change that. But having said that, we've been going at this for years now. And it seems to be that the problem's going to exist, and it looks like it's out of a lot of people's control. I think a lot of us, if we work together instead of blaming each other, we could do more. I would love for that to occur. But in the meantime, right now, until that ground is even chance for us to get to that point, we are fighting a battle that we're very limited in what we could do to create a positive outcome in that. It's something that really is out of our control. So, looking back at it, and we've been fighting this battle for years. I've done a lot of videos on understaffing, guys, and Tier Talk's been around for almost a decade. That means that if I would have stayed so focused on understaffing and, really just being angry about it every day, 10 years of my career is gone. 10 years of my career is gone. 10 years of my life is gone. I'm not saying that, we move past it. I'm saying, but at one point, it's like, okay, guys, I get it. We're understaffed. I get it. We may not go home today. I get it. But what can we do? And I'm not saying, and by the way, this is not a win-loss. I'm not telling people to accept it as something permanent. I'm not telling people to accept it as you're throwing up your white flag. I'm telling you guys that we have to work through it until matters can officially change and until the outcome can be, something that we do have control of. 10 years later, I can tell you it's probably not going to be anytime soon. We have to kind of step up and say, okay, guys, I get it. We're understaffed. I get it. We're dealing with bullshit legislation. I get it. We're dealing with these asshole managers. I get it. I've heard it for 10 years. So what's the only advice I can give you at that point is, guys, as superficial as this may sound, we have to ourselves change our own attitude and efforts to things that we cannot control, because this is still going on 10 years from now. If I came out and said, hey, I'm going to do a video on understaffing, and once this video gets out, it's going to change everything, it's a lie. Nobody in this room, nobody that's in any position has the ability to change these uncontrollable things. That's why they still exist. If it was easy to solve, trust me, at this point, it would be. And sometimes, guys, it's not even just about what we feel are the superficial external incentives. Because in some states, like Jersey, where our people are well paid, it's still not enough to keep people on the job. It's a lot more than just the tangible. In most cases, guys, it's the things that you cannot touch. It's the things that you cannot see. It's the things that you could feel. So, there's a lot of people that say, well, if you just paid more and you just did, that's great. I'm not saying that I'm not saying it's a negative thing. Of course, that's a great thing. That's a great Kickstarter. But there are some states that do get paid well, and they still don't have enough people. So that's not a catch-all solution. It's just a good start. But that doesn't mean that if we start doing that, the problem is solved. No, it's a Kickstarter. It seems to be a problem that's going to persist for quite some time. So I think the advice from our level is we get it. We can sit and be miserable about it every day. And then we could vent to everyone that wants to hear it and then still wonder why people don't want to get into this profession. It's because, well, every time you talk about it, you talk about negative. We've been talking for about an hour and change. You haven't said one thing positive. So I'm sorry, I don't want the profession, regardless of what the pay is. I don't want it because I was actually willing to do it. But now I spoke to you and, now I don't want to do it because you haven't said anything positive this whole way because you strictly focused on the understaffing and I put up a poll recently. Would you recommend your family or someone you love to work in corrections? And believe it or not, guys, I could give you the number now. I'll give you the percentage. And guys, this does break my heart because I do advocate. We all advocate for the profession. But right now, it's only 26% that said yes, and 74% said no. Now, on Facebook, the responses are more qualitative. You're going to get a comment. But let me ask you a question on here. So me advocating for this profession, do I look at the people? So the question is, would you recommend a career in corrections to a family member or loved one? So 26% said yes, and 74% said no. Now, me as an advocate for this profession, I don't disagree with the smaller percentage that say yes, because I would. David Schillen, who who's been working with me now, his daughter just started corrections. He's the proudest father in the world. So now I'm like, wow. I look at this as like, holy shit, I got a lot of work to do, because 74% here said they would not recommend this profession to anyone. Now think about something, guys. Some of these people that fall into the 74% may also be people that are complaining that we're not doing enough to get people into this profession. You know, so where's the catch-22 on that? You know, so my job is, holy shit, what I got to do is I'm not going to spend all my energy on the 74% who have made their mind. I'm spending all my energy on the 26% that are going through this struggle, doing everything they can to find something positive to keep with the morale. And people might, oh, they're foolish. Guys, what they're doing is harder. That the reason why I feel that the 26%, you know, again, it's yes, is because it's intentional, and that takes effort. It takes effort and courage right now to say yes to that question. But again, my focus would be more on that 26%. But when I did that quote, or I did that poll, and then we sit there and say, well, it's all a management problem. Well, there's a few hundred people that were in this vote. And I'll guarantee you the 74%, maybe a small percentage is management, but maybe a big part of it is also frontline. So my biggest concern is this: have we become so disenfranchised, so upset with the times and the things that we're going in, that we actually have given up? And then we complain, like, yeah, there's just not a lot of people that want to be in this profession. Well, let me ask you a question. When someone asked you, would you recommend this profession to someone else? What would you say? Yes or no? Oh, hell no. I would never recommend this profession. Okay. Well, then you can't get mad when people don't want to be in this profession, because there could be a good chance that you could connect to someone and say something great. Like, I mean, I know people that will stand tall. Probably people that fall in that 24% is probably because they have a relative that was in it. My father was in it. My mother was in it. Or they're looking for something stable, or they just believe in the value of the work. And I did a video the other day, guys. This relates to employee morale as well. We have to commit to sacrifices every day. And part of the sacrifice is what we're going through now, 100%. Understaffing. I get it. You know, we're being mandated. I mean, at one point I was going through that as well, you know, especially when I worked on third shift and I had to cross into the bigger shift. You know, we're getting mandated 4 or 5 days in a row. I get it. But having said that, if we don't believe in the value of the work we do, then we ourselves minimize the value behind the sacrifice that's being made. So when I get mandated, it's superficial crap. Why am I getting mandated? You know, it's bullshit. It's like, well, do you believe in the work that you do? No. So then if you don't believe in the work that you do, then obviously the sacrifice doesn't, you know, has no weight to you. But now the problem is there's another level to that. Your family. If you don't believe in the work that you do, if you don't believe the value behind the work that you do, then your family doesn't believe in it. They can't, because you're not translating it. So the problem is when you make a sacrifice, and ultimately, believe it or not, the sacrifices that you make for the job also help the family, because you wouldn't be making those sacrifices if it wasn't for the family. They're not isolated. They're connected. Everything I've done for the job is to do for my family. They're not isolated events. You know, if I have to commit to work, then I hope my wife steps up and tells the kids why I couldn't be at a certain event. But my job technically is to make sure I continue to have value in the job. So when I have to sacrifice, I can translate that value to my wife. So then when my wife has to tell my kids why I'm not at a party or something like that today, she can't, you know, she knows that the sacrifice has a greater value. Something as simple, well, Daddy couldn't be at the party today because he has to make sure no bad people get out of prison. You know, you're translating value, so the sacrifices matter. But the moment you stop valuing what you do, the moment you stop valuing your position in this profession, then your sacrifices don't mean shit. You know why? Because you don't believe in it. And then your family doesn't believe in it because you don't translate it to them. But hey, I want to go with Butch first, and then Joe. I want to ask you about that poll. So again, you got 74% that would not recommend it. And I get why. Don't get me wrong. I get why. I'm not saying I don't get why. But then you get the 26 that do recommend it. If you had to focus energy, would you focus your energy on the 26% or the 74%?
That's a tough one. That's a tough one.
I am overwhelmed with thought right now over what you just said, and I've heard you use, the same articulate some of that stuff before, and that is a tough one because I think of all the things that directors or commissioners have done in certain states to try to alleviate this understaffing issue. And right off the bat, I know plenty of commissioners that what they did, or directors, they've done yeoman's work with once they changed some of the laws and the population started to diminish, they started to consolidate prisons and close prisons and take the staff from one prison and put it, with another prison to supplement the staffing levels. So, there's a lot of things that people have done to try to fix that. Now, how do you get that message to the people that, are getting, you call it mandated, we called it forced. I don't know. Even if you can get them the message in the time of heat, when they wanted to go home and they can, I'm not even sure they're going to listen to you, or even care. They're just so focused on, I want to go home and I can't. So, I think you have to focus on both. Maybe, pay a lot of attention to the 24%, but you're going to have to spend some time with the 76%. You may not give the same amount of time to those folks because they may not be, savable. It may be futile, could be futile.
Well, let me ask you a question, Butch, because I agree with you, by the way. And it's great that we're having this discussion because here's my thing, though. I'm sure that the 24%, whatever, 26%, whatever it is also going through the same struggles, but they're still able to vote a yes. So my biggest concern is that, I get we're going through these things and we can't control it. So I just don't want people to be miserable for something that they cannot control that will eventually take years of their career away from them.
Yeah. So one of the things when I've heard you articulate it in such a fantastic talk the talk type to us, folks that have lived this stuff. Who are these 24%? That's what I started to think of. How does it break down? I'd love to know. So let's look at it. So in most agencies, a majority of the inmates are in medium security. A minimum or less of that amount is in maximum, and even less are able to work their way through the process and get to minimum. So the folks that work in the minimum security facilities can be some of the folks that say, hey, this isn't the greatest job, but it provided for my family. And if it was, one of the alternatives to sink or swim, I would recommend this job. But their conditions of employment are a lot different than the folks working, Rikers Island in the maximum security facility. Medium, where we have the most of the staff working, that's a tough road to go right now. Medium and maximum security prison with the adverse legislation and the unbalanced changes that have come in the last few years. It's made it very difficult. But if you don't change some of that 76%, we're never going to have a pool to draw from. Where do we draw? Who are these people that sign up to be correctional professionals today? What's their background? Where do they come from? What's their purpose?
I was going to just say that. Why are they signing up?
Why are they signing up? Is it, and I think I might have mentioned this on a previous podcast, and I think we all have some similarities. One for me was I came from the military, so I wanted some type of structure, and I knew that it was a paramilitary type organization. So that's what, attracted me to corrections to begin with. And then when I looked into it, I thought, Man, that's some pretty good pay. Now, here's another thing I always think of when we talk about pay. In my opinion, people make a decent living in comparison to other folks, but they earn it. And it may not be enough money for people to put up with the stuff that they're going to have to put up with. But, so and listen, you're not going to get laid off. It's
Yeah.
consistent, and you don't have to when when times are tough, we're not getting laid off. There was some talk about laying off correction officers at one time, and budget years and all this other stuff, but it never panned out, and never would. They're starving for people, but somehow, who are these people, and what makes them today? What are the reasons for them coming aboard? I don't know. I got a little detached from the entry level person in my last few years, although the folks that were responsible for training and recruit training and hiring and all that, they kind of stayed in touch, and some of those executive level people I was very friendly with, and very they were my colleagues, and we talked about the difficulties. Who are these people? They would start the academy, and then 2 weeks later they would say it's not for me, which I thought was good. Get them to, if they left at that point, it was better than after we got them into the facility. But who are these people, and why do they? I would love to interview some of the incoming people and see what's attractive to corrections, and what made you come. I told you I used to run a transportation division, and I used to have employees come to me after about 2 or 3 weeks and say, I made a mistake. I don't think this is a good fit. And I used to ask them, well, what did you think it was? And some people, didn't want to have to make the decision to use deadly force when we gave them the firearm and it was theirs, and they started to think about it. I've never really done a transportation detail. I was always assigned to a housing unit or somewhere in the facility where I never really had, they weren't in a tower or something. I had several of them come and say, this is real stuff, and I don't know if I could do this. And I used to say, no hard feelings. I'm glad you told me now than when it happened and you couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And Anthony, I think some of the time too is some of the people stay in the custody ranks when they probably should have moved on. I wish we would give some advice after you get some tenure or some seniority in, and a maintenance position opens up and you have some skill, or even a program officer on the program side. So we had some correction officers that would have some culinary skills, that would or mechanics. When we ran the fleet, I had some great correction officers that worked for me that were mechanics, and so there's all types of opportunities, and I think some of that 76% could change, or 74%, if we had some career paths and we had some coaching with that stuff. We don't do a lot of career planning with our folks. It's kind of natural that if you're a CO, you stay a CO, and then you make sergeant and lieutenant and move on. And some of that's great. And I'm going on long, but I don't think captains in my agency are part of that 76%. I think once you reach a certain level, although the job can become harder in some aspects, there's some alleviation of some of that. Not many captains were getting forced or mandated. There wasn't a shortage of captains. There can be, but it's not over long periods. And we promote into there to make sure that we had shift commanders. There's no shortage of wardens. There may be shortage of good ones, but there was no shortage of wardens. So, that line person in the trenches, that's the ones, those are the guys, and those are the professionals, and the female officers and the male officers that are, that's the tough nut to crack. But it's not any different than, think about the folks that joined the service and when we were in the last 20 years, when we were in Afghanistan and Iraq, what did they think they were getting into?
Right.
Shit.
So
you know what you're saying, Butch, is perfect, because I want to mention something too. When you this time of the profession, when things are tough, you know, and we're battling these things. And by the way, guys, people have more information, more resources, so they kind of have an idea, more than we did going in, of what they're going into. So, you know, for those that are questioning why would someone choose to be in this profession, yeah, you could get the worst. You could get quality hires. You know, I'm sorry, quantity hires. You know, we're desperate. We got to hire numbers, and you can get them, and they're going to filter their way through right now. Don't get me wrong. But you also could get people that know what they're going into, but they're not driven by external incentives. You know, it could be something, as I said, that's generational, or they find I know people that it was their dream to work in corrections. You know, no matter how rough the time is right now, they're going to want this job. I mean, you know, and hopefully we keep them motivated when they're in there. But when you have times right now that are this tough, you know, you may get, you know, quantity hires, but you also may get people that have a different type of motivation, you know, that could be more committed. And then the last thing we want to do is that when they come in is to find, you know, give them reasons to want to leave, you know. And as I said, I think that there's a lot of things right now that we cannot change, that we've been battling for 10 years. And I get it, you know, but to be honest with you, at this point, all we can do is keep on voicing our concerns. But you have to realize something too. Even the people that are behind these movements to push for more staffing, they also believe that the issue to resolve it is a lot more simplistic than it really is. You know, it's not an easy solve. It's not a one-trick pony to solve this. It's you know, it literally is everything from external incentive, yes, but also public perspective, value for the work being done on all levels. You know, that recognition of a law enforcement position, that would be great. You know, people just having value. I mean, really it's a shift in perspective. I mean, think about it right now. We're trying to bring people into corrections into a world that it's not what people think it is, you know. And as we try to bring people in, there's going to be a lot of counter influence to that. It's like, you want to go into corrections to do what? Corrections. It's like, yeah, you guys don't know that corrections provide this. I mean, I've been watching Tier Talk. I've been connected to the Keepers of Chaos community, and corrections is a lot more than just warehousing individuals, you know. But a lot of people, you know, again, they either may have a purpose and they get some level of counter influence to that purpose, or even when they're in, they get pushed away. So I don't think the answer is as simplistic as people may think. And the biggest concern I have is that when you have these people that are pushing onto like one entity to solve the problem, and then they realize, well, you know, oh, the governor could solve this by tomorrow. No, they probably couldn't.
No.
Because if they could, trust me, I think most would. And the sad thing is a lot of people are believing that this is a one-trick pony solution. So now what they do is, instead of buying into the effort of all the people that are trying, they buy into this one-trick solution that doesn't exist. And then when we watch these videos about, you know, well, when you could just solve it by doing this, this, and this, people start believing that's the only that could be solved that way. And it's like, well, Gangi, I get what you're talking about, but you know, you could solve understaffing by just doing A, B, and C. No, because if it was just A, B, and C, it would have been done by now. So my concern is, I learned a couple of years ago, I don't believe in A, B, and C no more. Because if A, B, and C existed, I know out of desperation mode, especially from my higher position now, we'd be doing A, B, and C. A, B, and C it doesn't exist. It's a lot more complicated to that. So then I'm like, well, if A, B, and C doesn't exist, but I've been believing in A, B, and C for so long, I just wasted 5 years of my life on people that have been telling me that the solution to this problem is a lot more simplistic than it actually is. So now, as I've evolved, and I see the scoreboard, technically, I know where we're at in the game. I know that we are losing. I get it. You know, I get it. I know we're losing, but I don't have a batter that can give me a home run every time I put him at bat. If anything, I have good batters, but they can't guarantee me a home run. They can't. Doesn't mean I'm not going to put the person at bat, but if that person doesn't hit me a home run, you don't think I'm not going to appreciate the fact that, hey, maybe they got me on first, though. Or maybe they got me on second. We're no longer appreciating, the singles and the doubles. We want home runs. That's all we want right now is home runs. And for people that believe that the answer is always one home run away, the problem is you're going to find out the world's a lot more difficult than that, because one home run is not that easy when a pitcher can throw 20 million different types of balls at you. And then you have to figure out, oh shit, how am I supposed to adapt and adjust to that? And at the end of the day, what I said is, you know what? All I can do, not give up, because it's not giving up. Actually, this is harder to do, is just adapt and adjust to the times, because I refuse to be miserable over things I cannot control. And yes, guys, I've been hit multiple times. And yes, just like everybody else, I love what Butch said. I was angry in the moment, and there was very few people that could console me. But with that said, looking back at it now and thinking like, what did I do at the end of the day? I was mad, but I still did my 8 hours. I still did another 8 hours on top of that. So I wind up being miserable 16 hours a day, 4 days a week. And it's like, guys, as I got older, I don't have energy for that anymore. It's not saying I'm passively saying, hey, when you get hit, passively accept it. But I refuse to give energy to something I cannot control. All I do now is expect my support, my family, to understand, hey, there was an emergency today. I have to go in. Don't give me kickback. I have a job to do. So please support me in going in, because I don't want to be there. Because most of the time, the issues that I had with being mandated was more of, not even selfish, was more of, shit, I was supposed to do my daughter's birthday party. Shit, now I can't go to that. So when I made that conversation with my wife, and my wife understood that, hey, it comes with the job, and she was able to support the effort made, then the road became a little bit easier. So having said that, being able to share that with my wife saying, hey, you know what? I get it. Don't worry. I'll tell the kids why you couldn't be there, because at the end of the day, I know you have to go to work, because if you don't, this is going to be the outcome. That alleviates a lot of the stress. That alleviates that phone call that you got to make, knowing that, you know what, guys, I've seen, listen, guys, I got one more thing. I've seen people that would volunteer a mandate, obviously, because, hey, you know what, I'll take the mandate, Joe, because I know you got a birthday party, but they'll make a phone call to their wife. I know, honey, I love you too. Boom. Phone call to their husband. I love you too. Boom. Because there was a communication. It was funny, especially if they both were correctional officers. They both were correctional officers. They understood the demand. Now, again, I'm not saying that we don't value our time with our family, but if your family knows the type of job you're in, and they know that you have to work, because if you don't work, you're not going to be able to provide, their support can carry you a long way when it comes to dealing with these uncontrollable times. And again, that's if you have to stay in this profession. If you don't, and that's a concern, then yes, if you can leave this profession and find something better, by all means, do it. I'm not telling you not to do that. But the last thing I want you to do by the end of this dialogue is feel trapped by uncontrollable times. You don't want to do a career that way. I'm sorry. It's just not a healthy mindset. And granted, guys, we can come up with a million excuses of why we can feel trapped. But then you can get that one person that says, you know what, guys, I get it, but I'm not going to live my life like that for 10 years. So I talked to my wife. She knows I can't come to the birthday party, but she supported me in this way, which makes the road a little bit more easier. And now I can more focus on the now. I think the key part of this dialogue is when it comes to the morale, inward morale, we know these things are going to happen. I mean, do we want it to happen? No. Am I telling you to accept it? No. But am I telling you that you may have to work through it? Yes. And am I telling you to do it for the agency? No. I'm telling you to do it for you. Because if you don't do it for you, it's going to tear you down. And I'm telling you guys, I've seen people that have became so miserable and disenfranchised with their career that they've done their 25 years, left, and literally had a miserable life for 25 years. You know why it was miserable, guys? Because even on their day off, they were still worried about going back to work. I have another week off vacation. I had 2 weeks off, and I was doing a show the other day. I used to love getting out of work on Friday, love Saturdays, hated Sundays because I'd have to go back to work on Monday. And I lived that way for about 10 years. 10 years. And you know what that did for me in the long run? It made me hate Sundays when I'm spending time with my family because I'm so concerned about going to work on Monday. I never truly enjoyed the day I had off. And so I was like, well, how do I solve that? I solved that by finding a way not to dread going to work. If I can find a way not dread going to work, then I can enjoy the days when I'm off. How weird does that sound? But it's true. They trickle in together. A lot of people are like, well, Gangi, you really got to enjoy going to work and separate. It's like, I know, guys, but here's the funny thing about that, guys. If I truly hate work and I truly dread going to work, even when I'm off work, I'm going to think about going back to work. So the solution is either going to be for my own benefit. If possible, and I can get another job, I got to get the fuck out. But I got to make sure I'm running towards something, not running away from something. So, again, there's going to be problems in every profession. So if I'm looking to escape something and go to another profession because I'm looking to run away from something, that's not going to be a long-term solution either. Or if I know I have to be in this job and there's nothing I can do, I'll be damned if I'm going to trap myself. So I'm going to change my attitude. I'm going to change my effort. And at the end of the day, I'm not going to dread going into work on my Monday, because if I do that, then I lose out on the days that I'm off, because the dread part is the worst. It's not when you're at work. It's dreading going to work, because when you're dreading going into work, that's when it bleeds into your personal time. Dreading going into work affects you on your personal time. So for people that are like, oh, my day might, yeah, but if you hate work, if you truly hate work and you truly hate what you do, then I know for a fact that you're dreading going into work. And that's what affects your personal time. What's your thoughts on that, Joe? I know there was a lot there, but this is more about an inward look to affect morale. It's not an attack, but I do believe inwardly we have to shift some level of perspective over the things we cannot control.
Absolutely. And, we've all been in them facilities where, Texas is at they're probably the most critical staffing shortage in history. The officers were being mandated not only to work 4 hours over, because they worked 4 on, 4 off, 12-hour shifts. Not only were they being made to work 4 hours over their shift for a 16-hour day, some of them were being forced to come in 4 hours early prior to their own shift. So I found, every week we turn out and look, guys, we already know mandates are going to happen. We already know that some of us are going to have to stay over. Some of us are going to have to come in early. And on top of that, some of them were being forced to give up 2 of their 4 days off. But what I found worked better and actually helped the process a little bit is I put it on them. I told them to network with each other, because, I know that Gangi has to get his kids on the school bus by 6 o'clock in the morning or 6:30 in the morning. And I know Butch, who, has kids coming home from school, doesn't have somebody there. They live too close. They can't catch a bus to the house. So somebody has to pick those kids up. And I know Butch has to pick his kids up in the afternoon. So I told them, you guys get with each other, work out who has what. You had those parents that wanted to be at their kids' baseball practices every Tuesday or every Thursday, whatever the case was. And when it came down and they called it out on the radio, hey, we're looking for volunteers, to stay over 4 hours. I found if you give them just a little bit of control over when they stay over, that's all they want. Nobody wants to be told, at the last moment, okay, Joe, you're not going home. You're staying over 4 hours. You're going to go work ad seg, like 3 minutes before it happens. Nobody likes that shit. We've all been there. We've all done it, but we don't like it. And I found that if you give them just a little bit of control to say, hey, you know what, Lou, can I trade tonight for tomorrow night? I absolutely have to get to my kids, school teacher conference. And I found that if you let the officers work that out amongst themselves, they come together collectively. It makes the mandates go a lot easier. And, 9 times out of 10, it happens just like you say. Okay, I know Butch has to get his kids, so don't worry about asking him. I'll take his 4 hours so he can go get his kids off the bus, since, his babysitter can't pick them up or whatever. If you give them just that little fraction of control over their own destiny, and, it tends to work out a lot better. As far as these percentages go, you got to look at the 20% versus the 76%. Who's the 20%? The 20% are probably your new employees And by new employees, I mean employees that are just coming out of high school, and we're waving $4,000 a month in front of their face. Well, shit, yeah. Who the hell's not going to sign up for $4,000 a month? You know, coming straight out of high school, you've never had a job before. Where all three of us on this panel right here, we've either come out of the military, we've come from other job backgrounds, so we had some sort of work ethic before we came into this. And like Butch, I came into it coming out of the military because I was looking for something that was still structured. Even though I was working for the sheriff's department at the time, I was looking for something that was structured. And, you know, 4 on, 4 off. Dude, you're only working half a month every month for a year. You're only working half a year every year. 4 days on, 4 days off. You know, it wasn't about the money. You know, the COs are getting paid probably 4 times what I was getting paid when I came in back in 92. I remember bringing home $1,100 a month after taxes in 92. And here these officers are making $4,000 a month. They're making now what assistant wardens were making 10 years ago. So, you know, if they say it's about the money, they're full of shit. It's money's got nothing to do with it. You know, you control your own expenditures, and if you budget yourself right, you have the money. You know, so it's not about the pay. You know, you got to start looking at your frontline supervision, the way they treat their employees. You got to look at the culture of the facility. You know, and when I say the culture of the facility, let me shift to the 70%. How many of those 70% are retired employees, such as myself, who's in for 30 years, Butch for 35, and out of those, how much change did we see in that time? We went from coming in and being able to run our own facilities to having so many outside political influences that on a good day, our hands are tied between PREA, ACA, you know, and now all the stuff with the law enforcement being targeted, you know, now that's spilling over to the correctional facility. We got correctional officers in Texas that are being indicted for manslaughter because of use of force. Where an offender died, you know, so now you got that aspect. But, you know, you got to ask yourself, how many of those 76% or, you know, that 70 some odd percent are burnouts, you know, who just got flat burned out. And out of those, you know, we probably seen the institutions change so much that we know, you know, what it used to be versus what it is now. And maybe that's the reason why we're not saying that we would recommend it to a family member. You know, saying that, you know, you can't do this because PREA states is, you can't do that because the ombudsman's office called. You can't do this because, you know, hell, in Texas now they're actually, some facilities are actually going to taser training. And going to be made to wear body cams. There's another game changer on top of the, you know, the brand new camera systems they've already installed. You know, so there's more safeguards for the offender population than there is for the officers, you know, and that's probably got something to do with that 70%. You know, the 20%, I'm looking at probably your first time employee, you know, that's making good money and saying, well, hell yeah, you know, I'm getting $4,000 a month. I got free medical, free dental. You know, I got a pension plan, not a 401k, but I got a pension plan. You know, I have a TexFlex card that, you know, tax-free money goes into this that I can use for medical expenses. You know, a lot of them are opportunistic. You know, they just see that $4,000. They don't see the other stuff. So, you know, there, as far as, you know, the mandating and stuff, it's not the mandation itself. It's how you sell it. You know, if you go in there and you give them employees just a fraction of their, you know, control over their own destiny and let them work that out amongst themselves, you'll find it's a lot better than calling on the radio saying, okay, you know, post 3, you're being mandated. You're going to have to stay over. Now you got a pissed off employee. You got a pissed off employee that had something planned, and you at the last minute just mandated them. You know what I mean? Versus letting them work that out amongst themselves ahead of time, saying, "Hey, I can't do it tonight. If you do it tonight for me, I'll take your shift tomorrow night."
Yeah, I like what you're saying, Joe, because the one thing you mentioned, I like the fact that, even like for those that, may say they make the complaint about the mandate, then you ask, well, that's why I want to be a police officer. Well, they're going through the same thing too. So I agree with you. I think it's some level of control, if possible. I agree with that because, again, this is corrections. It is a first responder job. There is a higher level commitment to this. So you are going to be expected to be on call if needed to some level. But I do like what you said, that level of control allows for the comfortability. Because, again, it's not so much selfish reasons why we don't want to get mandated. It's more of a promise that we're committed to something else. And as long as the family, can somehow help us with dealing with those concerns when we get mandated, I think it helps us out a lot. I mean, again, I just remember my biggest concerns were telling my family I had to stay, so if my wife was to give me kickback, it would make the concern a lot worse. But if my wife would be like, okay, not a problem, I'll see you when you get home, I was like, okay, that wasn't that bad. That wasn't that bad at all, actually, as long as my wife, because again, she always understood the commitment. But I also want to say something for the lower number that kind of says that they would recommend it. I also think that there are also individuals that still see value in the work that they're doing, regardless of the times that they're in. I mean, again, even though we're going through all this crazy stuff right now, it doesn't limit the value of the job. I mean, there's a lot of people that, are so invested in it. I mean, I remember working with someone who had already had 20 years in, and he told me, he's like, I'm 20 years in, I'm invested. I cannot hate this job because I'm invested in it. And be honest with you guys, I mean, a lot of us could say we could separate the job from who we are. No, not all the time. That's why people always ask the question, what do you do? Because for some reason, somehow what we do, what we get paid for does connect to some level of our identity, whether we do that consciously or, whether we do that unconsciously or whether it's pressure from, external sources. The point is there is some connection. So when that person said, I can't afford to hate this profession, well, what do? I adapt and adjust to the times. You figure, there's going to be things that you cannot control. So having said that, I can't wake up every day hating what I do, because eventually, and here's the part of it all, guys, eventually, if you start hating what you do, I have to assume that the hate starts going inwards. If I hate what I do, then eventually maybe I start to question the value I have in myself. I mean, I know what I do has value. And believe it or not, the value doesn't change whether I do 8 hours or 16 hours. The value is still there. It's still there, whether I'm committed to 8 hours that day or committed to 16 hours. So all because I've got hit, yes, I'm frustrated in the moment, but I got to separate my frustration from the value of the job. Because again, if I go to sell this profession to someone else, I have to sell the value regardless of my frustration. Because most of the time, people today, they want to know, Gangi, does what you do have value? Does what you do have purpose? Do you believe in the work that you do? Now, regardless if I'm committed to my job 8 hours or 16 hours, I still believe the work has to be done. Like, there's never one moment where I got mandated and said, well, that's bullshit. Why am I even being mandated for that post? That officer doesn't need another person there, or that post doesn't need anybody. No, you're getting mandated because you have to cover a post that needs a body there. So you're not questioning the fact that the post needs coverage. You're just questioning the fact that why does it have to be me? Like, why does it have to be me? I worked 3 days in a row. I get it, So having said that, I want people to know that the value of the job doesn't change because you've been mandated 4 times in a row. So if you're able to translate this profession, so if I ask those same people a different question, because I asked them, do you believe, would you recommend this profession to someone you love, whatever? And of course, they all said no. but they said no for external reasons that don't relate to value of the work behind the wall. Like if I was to go ahead and ask them, do you believe being a correctional officer is a noble job? It would shift to like 95% would say yes, and maybe 5% would say no, but based on some external justification because, well, it was noble, but it's no longer no more because bad management, all this. Okay, I get it. But that still shouldn't change your belief in the job. But fine, hear me out. So how does 95% believe that the job is noble and great, but they wouldn't recommend it to somebody else? You know, we have to learn to separate our frustrations, which are rather just temporary in nature, or we can make it temporary, not permanent. And we could push more on the value. So every moment that you feel frustrated about getting mandated, know for a fact you're mandated because the work is needed. Because if you weren't there, and that's hard to tell somebody in the moment, that's where you need the support from the family. But I just want people to realize that sometimes when we have that chance to connect with somebody and talk about the good about this profession, we get so frustrated that we don't even translate the value. So I could sit there and, you know, let's say Joe wanted to get in this profession. So I start communicating with Joe, and and Joe's been doing his research, and Joe is purpose driven. So when he gets into this profession, it's not about external incentive. I mean, he's got a purpose. He wants to come in with a purpose. And I sit there and I'm your connection to it. And I'm so frustrated. I talk about all these problems that I have. And then Joe, who's new, says, well, I know you have these problems, but do you believe that what you do has value? Do you believe that being a correctional officer is a noble career? Even though that person is frustrated, that person should still not shift that belief that this is a noble job. It's needed. But you haven't told me that once. Because I get there's going to be these things that I'm going into. I get it, the mandate. I get it. I've done my research. It's out in the open now. You're not telling me something I don't know. I know these things exist. But when I talk to you, I'm not talking to you about the things I can find out on the internet within a quick Google search. I want to ask you, going through all this, all these concerns, do you still feel the job has value? And then when you find someone that's able to translate that amongst the bullshit that's happening, that person there is what's going to motivate someone to come into the job for the right reasons. Because everything that you say that's an antagonist against that, we could Google that. If I was new, I don't have to go to Joe to tell Joe about understand. I don't need to go to Joe on that because I could Google that. I could find that. But I would ask Joe, hey, Joe, I'm thinking about getting corrections. I know, and I know this is true, guys, because I get the comments and questions all the time. It's more of this. Hey, I know what I'm getting into. I know it's this, this, and this. I know I can get mandated. I get it. But, Joe, do you believe in the work you do? And Joe's going to come out around and say, yes. Why do you believe in it? And that's what's going to sell somebody to this profession. That's what's going to sell them. And those are the people you want. If someone fucking asks you right off the bat, why do you do what you do? And that's a great question because it's inward driven, it's purpose driven. And then you turn around and you shift it to something external that doesn't even connect to that. You just lost out on somebody that could have had an impact on this profession far greater than you could ever imagine, because that question is rare. That's a question that if that person comes in, you connect them to the right people and you cultivate the shit out of that person, because that's the person you want who's going to make a difference. If I said someone that wanted to come into this profession, they say, well, I can't deal with the understand. I can't deal with being mandated. What am I going to tell them? Dude, you're a fucking rookie. We're dealing with, you got to deal with it. You know, so right off the bat, you don't have the right motives. But if I have someone coming in saying, hey, Joe, I know you've gone through it. I'm ready to go through. I'm ready to make that commitment. But can you tell me about the value behind the work? Hug this person. Bring them in. Because at the end of the day, if somebody wants to leave this profession based on the external stuff we're going through, then let them leave. Because they're the ones that are going to call out when we need them the most anyway. Let them leave. But if you're able to sell an inward drive and they understand to some extent what they're getting into, but they still want to come in, you better start motivating them from the inside out now. That's what your job is now. Because that's the person that's coming in for the right reasons. Hey, as we get to a close, what's your thoughts on that, Butch? I'd like to get both your thoughts on that real quick, and then we'll come to a close. But what's your thoughts on that, Butch?
It's, again, that, you know, my mind's racing with all different thoughts about, you know, the purpose, you know. And I think back and and I think a lot of my colleagues and the people that I associated with in the agency and during my career all had, similar purpose. We took it personal. We thought that the violent, bad people who, don't abide by the law and are dangerous and hurt other people who are, we were the place, we manned the posts that kept those people away from America's freedom, the American dream, prosperity, safe. We were those folks that, send us, your worst to the worst, and we protected, our community from those people for a period of time. That was our purpose. Now, there was a lot of things, that changed over the 35 years, 9 months on how we did that. But, I agree with you. If someone came in with that attitude, yeah, hug them, take care of them, mentor them. But if people come for the wrong reason, and we've talked about the wrong reasons, Anthony, you've talked about stepping stone, right? Using this job as a stepping stone. If you come into it just for the money, yeah, you're going to have some money, but I don't think you're going to work harder than what you think that the money that you're taking home, and then you're not going to see the worth in it after a period of time. I will tell you this too, after, having some thought at what we were talking, and I know we're getting a little off track, but I think the younger people in this country are going to have or deal with the issues that us older seasoned veterans, they deal with it differently. And I'm going to, I don't want to go on and on and on, but I have two children that are at college age. And I must tell you, sometimes even in prison, when I had to deal with the new legislation relative to LGBTQ, and I had a hard time wrapping my head around some of the directives related to that, pronouns and different things. I got to tell you, my children have no issues with that whatsoever. And they'd say, "Dad, what's the big deal? Call him a she." They're a lot more understanding to some of this new stuff. So I don't know. Maybe some of the stuff that we got all. It's tough to sell to some of the seniors as to the staff. I left some meetings on days and said, how am I going to sell this to the people I have influence over? How do I leave this room on the same page as what the boss just told? That was some difficult. You really question your worth when you have to leave there, and you read the solitary, and I hate calling it solitary confinement because I don't believe that solitary confinement exists in this country and hasn't for 100 years.
Punitive.
But I don't even think it's always punitive. I don't know if punitive, but what do we call them now? Restricted housing units, I think, is a good
or restorative housing.
Restorative housing. But how am I going to sell this to some of these people? How am I going to make this work? No one asked us when they, there wasn't one correctional professional on that committee that the legislature put together, nationwide. This is not just Massachusetts, right. Nationwide. ACA came out with all the standards ahead of the courts and different things. Where was our voice? But anyway, I don't want to get off track, but that was some of the hardest things when I left those meetings, I was challenged with, how am I going to be effective at this? Some of this stuff was just so unbalanced and made without, good correctional experience help in making some of those decisions. So, but again, I think, people coming in are younger, and sometimes I don't think we give them enough credit. Very, very difficult. And all of it is going to impact morale to get back on scope. But some of the things we mentioned here today, I think can help, manage morale. It's never going to be perfect. There's always going to be issues, and this is some tough times. I will tell you this, and I'm a big history guy when it comes to corrections. When I started in corrections in 1986, I didn't even have to take the civil service exam. they would hire us off the street, and then when the next one came up, you would take it and then somehow get certified. That's unheard of today. They may have to think about doing that again, taking people off the street, but they. So what my point is that there was a hiring crisis even back then. We in this profession, this is not new to the profession. People before us have managed, and corrections has been around in this country for over 200 years, and it's going to be here 200 years after we're gone. It's going to look different, probably going to be different, but and I believe that it's going to be here forever. There's always going to be folks who need some type of involvement with the criminal justice system. So, keep working hard. Understand what you're getting into. I think managers and prison wardens and their staff can work very hard, and there are some things to help. And hopefully, I think you're seeing some of the tide turn now. I think New York State, the Correction Officers Union, have now petitioned their legislator to overturn some of that stuff. I'm not sure that it will happen, but at least you're seeing now people finally speaking up and saying, "Hey, this is not working." And we have to have a better way.
Well, I think that's a big part of it. I mean, we've discussed that many times as well, where corrections is moving forward. We know that. And at the end of the day, we can't provide excuses and expect to move forward with it. We have to find our way to be invested in it. And, again, that management's job is to obviously get people to build an understanding, let them see the bigger picture. That's 100%. But we also have to have people that don't just buy in, but believe in it. And I believe there's certain key words, it's not about change. It's about evolving. Like even, I want people to know that even when we change, we still stay true to the core values, that, we're built upon, because no one could sit there and say corrections, whether good or bad, where we're at today, because of the successes and failures of yesterday. We wouldn't know what to do or what not to do if it wasn't for the sacrifices that were made along the way. So I think that when we go to cultivate our growth, we allow the people that are actively involved to let them know, hey, you're involved in this regardless. If you think you are or you're not, you are, because we wouldn't be where we're at. So these people that come in from these legislators that say, oh, we're going to implement change. You're not implementing change. You're not. You're borrowing from us of what we've already been doing, and you're trying to steal it and make it your own. Stop doing that shit, because we're becoming resistant, and we're falling, like, hey, how could you say change when, first of all, that makes me wonder what the hell I've been doing since I've been in this profession for, let's say 36 years almost, or Joe's case, 30 years, you're going to come in and from the outside tell me we're going to change things that I've been doing. I've been sacrificing for the last 30 some odd years. I'm going to be against that just on purpose alone, you could say the best idea in the world. I'm going to be against it because you gave me the middle finger before you introduced it. But had you come in and said, hey, Joe, thanks to your 30 years, and, hey, Butch, thanks for the 35, 36 years you got, because of the stuff that you've done, we've been able to evolve into this. Okay. So I've been a part of it all along. Yes. So I think it's the words that we're using. Like why use change? Use evolve. Why use the word transform? Use cultivate. Let people know we're connected to the roots, and that we're not breaking from it. We're just continuing to grow like any organization does. But having said that, guys, I mean, at the end of the day, we want people that prove to be resourceful. So parts of this dialogue right now isn't really to say one side's right or one side's wrong. It's like, are we actually taking a step back and looking at things from the highest level possible? Because here's the funny thing, guys. If we look at employee morale, I know some people may think that you can get a good idea of it by looking upwards. It's not. The best way to see employee morale, to be honest with you, is at the highest level and looking down. Because the highest level looking down sees everything moving all at once. It's basically the higher the perspective, the less isolated things seem to be. When I'm at front line, I'm totally departmental. I see things in an isolated fashion. But when I'm in the higher level management and I look down, I see all components working together as one. And that's the perspective where I want to provide. I want people to know that we can always go back and forth blaming each other, But in the end, this is the time where we need each other. And I don't want people to be miserable in a profession right now that's not just fighting for survival, but fighting to get value in people's eyes who just don't know what it is that we do. So sometimes we could get so frustrated that we spill out negative stuff based on frustration and people run with it, as opposed to, hey, I know I'm frustrated about, the understaffing and all this other stuff, but if someone's going to ask me, do I still think this profession has value? I'm going to answer with a fuck yeah, an exclamation point, regardless of me getting mandated 4 days a week. You still can't deny the fact that what we do has value. Don't let the external frustrations eliminate the inner value that you have for what you do. And it does hurt when people don't want to recommend the profession. I get it. But when you think about it, I get it. Those external pressures, I get it. But if you shift it and I said, hey, is there value in this job? And you say yes, why would you not want to suggest that? So there's a twist there that we need to figure that out. So again, I just want people not to be miserable when they go to work. I want them to find a way to put their energy on the things that they can control. Because again, guys, he even said in 1986, there were concerns with staffing. So stop believing that there's a simplistic solution to solve everything, because it doesn't. All that does is minimize the efforts of the people that are trying, so they eventually give up. You start believing the solution's a lot more simplistic, and then when you don't get the outcome you want, you start to get disenfranchised yourself. And at the end of the day, we're not doing anything together, because we're actually pointing the fingers at people that we think are solely responsible for the outcome when they're not. All we're responsible for is our effort and attitude, and that goes both ways. Effort and attitude goes both ways. Hey, guys, just our closing thoughts. I'll go with you, Joe, first, then Butch. Hey, Joe, you have anything you want to say in closing? Wrap it up.
Yeah, I mean, being the salesman has a lot to do with the outcome and the morale of your shift. Even if it's something that, like Butch said, you come out of a supervisor's meeting or an administrative meeting and you're thinking to yourself, how in the fuck am I going to sell this? How am I going to go stand in front of my 30 people and deliver this news and make them choke this bullshit down? But when you think about it, and you have time to think about it, it's all in the presentation. How you sell it, the way they receive it determines your outcome. And there's been times where, hell, I didn't buy into it and I didn't believe it either. But I never let my staff below me know that. I kept that shit to myself. I never even said anything to my sergeants. I went to the shift meeting and I said, hey, folks, this is the way it is. This is what we have to do. We just need to figure out how to incorporate it into our already hectic fucking lives. And if you have any ideas, please raise your hand. I'm open to anything. So again, if you give them that little piece of control and actually attempt to sell it to them, it works out a lot better. If you're that miserable, maybe it's time for you to go, because all you're going to do is spread, being that miserable. All it is going to make it toxic for everybody else. And then, you're already facing short staff and you're already facing mandation of 12, 16 hour days, plus maybe 2 of your days off, depending on the states. But, on the flip side of that, some of these officers, and even the new ones, they're coming in at 18, 19 years old. Hell, they got a lot more energy than my 50-year-old ass. If I had their energy and their opportunities, hell, I've been an exempt employee for 26 years. I never knew what overtime was, because overtime didn't exist when I was a CO. And any extra hours you put in went into a bankroll of time that you can take off later on down the road. Hell, if they had checkbooks open back then, shit, I've been knocking them in the head for all the overtime that I could get my hands on. And that's what some of these new officers are doing. They come out tired, but, their first 30 days of being mandated is probably the toughest. But, babe, when they get that check that next month for $9,200 on top of their, $4,000 a month salary for that time and a half, at some point it starts to get good to them. And as an example, I have one officer that worked for me. She only had 10 years in the system. and she was working 16-hour days, all 4 of her days on, plus she was working 3 out of her 4 days off, 16 hours. She made so much damn money that she bought her full retirement in 3 years. She was able to buy her full retirement in 3 years. You know, so there's things you can do to sell it. You know, take that extra money for you just got married, you're fixing to have a kid. Hell, start putting some of that money away. You can have a down payment on a house within 2-3 months. You know, it's all in how you sell it, how you present it. You know, if you go in there with a negative attitude, that's how they're going to receive it, as a negative attitude. And then what do you think the outcome's going to be?
Negative.
They're going to be negative. You know, even if you don't believe in it, sell it like you do. You know, we've all been there. We've all heard them things that were like, yeah, I call bullshit. But you still got to find a way to get your employees to do it. It's all in the way you sell it. And a lot of that's got to do with your frontline leadership and your leadership. You know, if you sell it the right way, trust me, they'll do it.
And that's and Joe, that's the key. I think, you know, that's another scary thing that we talked about is when we look at that percentage, if the higher percentage that wouldn't recommend it, if they happen to be supervisors or leaders, then you can see the influence already is going towards the negative. I mean, I remember someone asking me, you know, how tough is it being a leader in these times? He goes, because to be honest with you, with all this stuff happening right now, I don't want to move up. I said, well, then that you're admitting to yourself that you're not ready to be a leader then, because technically, to be honest with you, through these tough times, that's when leaders choose to move up. I mean, you know, again, with the sports analogy, but, you know, the person that wants the ball when there's 1 second left on the clock is the person that, you know, takes on that level of responsibility. You know, really, to be honest with you, it's about taking on the responsibility of an outcome. You know, that's the key. Regardless of what the outcome is, it's people taking on the responsibility of that outcome. So, you know, for those, I know we're going through troubled times, but this is when leaders do emerge, you know, good leaders. And by the way, good leaders aren't the ones that are, you know, getting people to continue to maintain being disenfranchised. Good leaders are the ones that are doing whatever they can not to allow that facility to go back to that status quo, because the facility is going to do that automatically. You know, there's not much effort in that. The effort comes from you going in the middle and not allowing that to happen, and constantly, you know, even if it's you going home just crying and upset, and you know, because you're going back in committed to that other effort. I mean, that's the key. We need people right now to step up more than ever that are willing to stop the facility from falling back into that disgruntled, disenfranchised staff who have every reason, every simplistic reason in the world to hate this profession. But if they could just be intentional, they'll find that there's a lot more. But again, you know, the negativity always outweighs the positive. If you ask somebody, why do you hate this profession? They may say 4 or 5 things, very simple things, very external things. But then if you ask them why do they love it, the list could probably be a lot longer, 10, 15, 20 things. But the sad thing is those 4 or 5 things on the negative side outweigh any positive thing. And here's another thing too, when it comes to first impressions, you know, when someone's introduced into this profession, the good, the positive has to come first, because it will redefine the negative that comes out subsequently, you know, as opposed to something being negative at first and then trying to give positive qualities after that doesn't work. If I told you, hey, Joe is an extremely nice guy, you know, good positive quality. I introduced Joe by saying something positive, and then I say 4 negative things afterwards. Believe it or not, the positive word said about Joe will give us context to work around the negative. So Joe is a positive guy, but yeah, maybe Joe went through 5 divorces. But you know what? Probably wasn't really Joe's fault. Joe's a good guy. But you see what happened there? The positive gives me context for the negative. Now, if I did it reverse and I said, Joe is a piece of shit, but Joe has integrity and Joe will get the job done. It doesn't matter anymore about those good qualities afterwards, because the context and the initial thought carries the most weight. So if I introduce people to this profession with the positive thought, they could redefine the negativity afterwards with positive context. But if I go ahead and introduce them with a negative thought, even if positivity comes out after they've been introduced to the negative thought, it all gets defined by the negative thought. It's initial impressions are a motherfucker, man. Excuse my language, but the initial impression truly defines what you see afterwards. Hey, Butch, you have anything you'd like to say in closing?
Well, we've been going on. We could talk all night, huh? I mean,
yeah, this is a good one, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a testament of how much you care, Anthony, and about the profession and about the people that work for you. And the same thing with Joe. We all care, and we're trying to do the best we can. Sometimes it's not doesn't come out that way. People have different they see it differently, but we're just trying to keep everybody safe, people inside the prison and people outside the prison, and we're trying to do it within the parameters the challenges that they give us. Someday in final closing, I think we need to discuss how we're going to solve this social media, how it makes it more difficult for us. Because I think, a lot of this stuff is, I think people on the other end of that have been bamboozled, lied to. I think the cons have pulled off some of the biggest con artist game ever to politicians and to some of the people outside making these decisions, and they listen to them, and I think they've been had. And I don't think that we do a good job defending ourselves. So, I think I have some answers to that. Of course, I've never been the director or the commissioner, and there's probably a reason that we don't push back. I think politics may get involved, but we have some of the answers, and I truly believe that. And even though the people outside think that, we don't have the answers, and what we've been doing, like you've said, for the last 35 years, we don't know what we're doing. I think that that's wrong. But someday we'll have that discussion, and maybe, I think we still have something to give to this profession.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Butch, what you said actually, just in my closing thought, that plays out to employee morale. I mean, we just crossed into this one area which we knew was worthy, but obviously providing vision, purpose, but also being defended. A good PIO should know sometimes it's not about pleasing everyone, but taking a side. But unfortunately, it's where they go for information. They may go for information for the wrong reasons. Like, instead of defending a point, they may go out for information to please a different party. So it's like, hey, if I say this, it's going to piss off the ACLU. Yeah, but it still has to be said because you can't sugarcoat it. So sometimes I think their purpose and what it is, that their reason for what they want to express, I think we could have a great dialogue. Maybe I can even get a PIO. But 100%. And again, that all plays out into morale. I mean, we got caught up in this perspective, but again, defending from the highest level practices, again, regardless of what the outcome is, if you clearly see the department saying like, hey, I know you guys want to do this way, but we're not going to fold on external pressure because that's going to break away from core values. So we're going to try this way. Now, regardless if it turns out that we lose that battle, people still have faith. It's like, well, they didn't shift, but unfortunately, it's the times. But
they didn't lay down. They're not weak. They didn't lay down. They had our back, or at least they tried.
Yeah, because the good part about that all is that if they go to do something like that a second time, they become more hesitant. We don't want to make the road so easy for them that they just decide to implement everything. But as always, guys, the show is tiered up. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post up a video. Stay safe.